Great! SPSS spit out a bunch of confusing looking tables, but what does it actually mean? And even if we know what the tables mean, what do they tell us? We'll start by looking at the information in the tables, then talk about how we can put that information in context to provide meaning. Before you move on, make sure to have a piece of scratch paper and pen or pencil handy to make some notes. The first table includes a column for each variable we analyzed and indicates how many participants were included in the analysis, then reports the statistics we selected in the statistics dialog box. The number of participants is abbreviated N, and the row labeled valid is the number we had data for. So, for the consistency and interest variable, we had 42 participants in the short grit survey file, and for perseverance we had 41. Why are the numbers different? Remember, I mentioned that SPSS knows what to do if we're missing data for someone. And we were missing information for one of the participants in the short grit survey file. That's represented by the number 1 in the perseverance column in the row labeled missing. We move down the rows for consistency and interest. We see that the mean for that variable was 10.9. There were multiple modes. The standard deviation was 3.85, and the smallest score was 4, while the largest was 19. Now, pause this presentation to write down the mean and standard deviation for perseverance. So what was the mean for perseverance? 10.92, 13, 8, 12.6? The mean was 12.6. Mean is in the third row of the table, and that value is in the third row of the perseverance column. The frequency tables for each variable appear below the statistics table in the output. The variable name is centered at the top of the corresponding table. These tables are organized in 5 columns. The first column lists each of the values for the variable that appeared in the data set. In this case, every score between 4 and 19 was included, but that might not always happen, in which case the scores that do not appear in the data set will not appear in the table. The second column is the number of times each score appeared in the data set. So, if we're curious how many participants scored a 10 for consistency of interest, we would look in the corresponding row to see it was 4. The third column is the percentage of participants in the data set who had each score. So we said that 4 participants had a score of 10. If we keep reading right, we see that's 9.5%. The fourth column is labeled valid percent. That is based on the number of participants who had a score for the variable rather than all of the participants. In the case of the consistency of interest variable, all participants had a score, so this is the same as the percent column. The fifth column is a running total of the percentages, so we know that 9.5% of participants had a score of 10, but how many had a score of 10 or less? To find out, we would look at the cumulative percent column and find the row for 10 to see that 47.6% had scores of 10 or less. Now, pause this presentation to answer the questions at the right. How many scored 14 on perseverance? 6. It's in the frequency column. What percentage of participants had a score of 14 or less? That's 70.7 in the cumulative percent column. And what percentage of all participants scored 14? 14.3%. It's in the percent column.